I'm thinking of making some videos about histories of countries and organizations. And they're gonna be showing map for map of what happened. And all of these maps will be made by me using different tools. I'm thinking this will help show all of the stuff on my channel a bit easier. Maps are the easiest way to show information. Today, I'm trying to do that with the Taliban. Why am I showing the Taliban? Because recently, in a military thing happened between the Taliban and Pakistan. So, I want to talk about the entire history of the Taliban and how it went. Without further ado, let's begin. The history of the Taliban all starts with the Second Afghanistan Civil War. By the way, since Afghanistan has a ton of different flags and they changed basically every single year at this point, I'm going to be showing them. Before the Afghanistan Civil War, people used this flag. Basically, this was an era of chaos in Afghanistan. Basically, the Russian Federation supported Afghanistan at every turn, but then it halted this. And then the entire thing fell into disarray. The Afghanistan Democratic Party was dissolved, and don't get me started on the local warlords that happened. It's just like the Chinese warlord area. Anyway, the Taliban decided to use this to their advantage and started taking the southern part of the country. They immediately took Kabul in a storm, which ended the civil war and basically made them the sole government of the place. However, the northern alliances in the north held strong, which would continue until a bit later. After that, the Taliban used this white flag, while the country in general used this flag. For some reason, it was used more in the warlord areas than in the southern areas. Before I go on, let's talk about 1996 to 2001. Pakistan was mainly the greatest friend of the Taliban. They officially recognized the government in 1997. They sent a ton of things to them as support. There were three main enemies of the Taliban: India, Iran, and Russia. India and Iran just hated terrorism. Same with Russia. Basically every single country hates terrorism. But India, that it was allied to Pakistan. And Iran didn't like that they were using Islam in a very something way. In Russia, well, it was more complicated because Tajikistan, one of the former republics of the Soviet Union, was having a civil war, and they were worried that people would look up to the Taliban and try to create another thing that would take Tajikistan by storm. Although the Taliban built new roads, they were mainly known for their oppression of women's rights, banning of pool, chess, music, movies, pork, anything made from human hair, and cutting beard. Meanwhile, Afghanistan started using this flag, which would then be known as the main flag of the Taliban. From 1996 to 2000, the third Afghanistan civil war started. The Taliban started to capture the North warlords because they were mainly in the agricultural area of Afghanistan, which basically supplied the entire nation with food. Overall, this was a success for the Taliban. Although they didn't capture all of the warlords, they mainly fulfilled their conquest and their goal. The only thing that was remaining was mainly the Panhandle and this area. Meanwhile, in the USA, in 2001, after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the USA invoked NATO's Article 5. Basically, if one member country is attacked, then Article 5 guarantees that all NATO countries will then respond to that attack. In other words, if you do something to one country, you're doing something to 30 countries. So all of NATO landed in Taliban Afghanistan and easily defeated the Taliban and put up a new Afghanistan government with this flag. The Taliban then fled somewhere in Pakistan as refuge. Now, there was some resistance going on in the south, but we'll talk about that later. Because that was a 2-decade war between Afghanistan and the Taliban, making that entire part of the map disputed. Meanwhile, let's talk about the Taliban in Pakistan. By the way, Afghanistan started using their current flag at this point. The Taliban in Pakistan decided to try and take Pakistan as the Tehrik-e-Taliban. They took mostly the eastern parts of the Taliban. Eastern parts of Pakistan. However, after shooting revolutionary person Malala Yousafzai, people started realizing more about the Taliban. And as soon as you know, the Taliban now had a lot of new enemies. Now comes the Taliban's biggest point in history. NATO and the Taliban created an agreement. NATO would remove its troops from Afghanistan, and in return, the Taliban would have to be less terroristy. Although NATO removed its troops, the Taliban did not become less terroristy, and took the entire country by storm, controlling all of it. The government then fled to somewhere in the Central Asia. And what mainly happened was that Afghanistan really had no official recognized government, as no one recognized the Taliban government. However, it was the only government that could be recognized. So essentially, Afghanistan was now a terra nullius, meaning no land. Present day, a military conflict started between Afghanistan and Pakistan, and with Afghanistan starting border clashes with Pakistan. What happens next is beyond our knowing. This video, please remember to subscribe, and I will see you next time.